economic conspiracy to try to control Egypt from behind the scenes. The spiritual leader, so-called spiritual leader of the Muslim Brothers organization, was not elected by any Egyptian voter, yet he was commanding members of the Shura Council, he was commanding members of the People's Assembly, he was commanding Morsi himself, and he was moving things around Egypt without being an actual official or even a head of any registered organization in Egypt. So I think these things also need to be taken in consideration, because limiting trials only on killing of protesters, I think it ignores the big factors which lead to these killings. In other words, if Mubarak is only tried for killing of protesters, which again is very difficult to prove, what about the 30 years which he ruled Egypt before those 2 weeks when these protesters were killing? What about the political, economic, and social corruption and distortion in society?
Yes. Mr. Nawwara, one final question, because we're running out of time now. During this retrial of former President Mubarak, probably the issue of killing some of the police officers, storming into the prisons, breaking into the prisons, setting some police stations on fire, will actually prompt some speculation regarding the case involving Dr. Mohammed Morsi and some of the Brotherhood leaders escaping from prison, especially Wadi Natrun prison. Do you think that probably this could affect the other case regarding former President Morsi and other Brotherhood leaders?
So I think that we had the verdict from Ismailia court. It was very clear in pointing the finger at Morsi, and again we need to establish a very solid case, because this is even a more dangerous situation, because it had possibly involved foreign elements.
Yes.
You know, we heard of the evidence and the phone calls and the equipment used by Hamas allegedly and Hezbollah in assisting the Muslim Brothers in storming some of these prisons, and of course there were prisoners killed, and also police officers, prison guards killed. I think that's a very dangerous case, because it involves allegedly some foreign powers, and Hamas. Although Hamas is okay, it's Palestine is a sister country and everything, but again, still it is a foreign power to use foreign elements to come into Egypt and storm installations like a prison, and then people get killed. I'm not saying that they killed them, but people get killed in the way. I think it's a very dangerous precedent, and I think this particular case has to take precedent in both in the public and also in the legal trials.
Yes, definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, next month will be the retrial of former President Mubarak, and also the trial of the Brotherhood leaders. In both cases, the killing of protesters on 2 separate revolutions and 2 separate dates. We'll be following all these developments here on Nile International and on the Daily Debate. And by this, we come to the end of the first segment of tonight's show. Once again, before we go, I'd like to thank Mr. Wael Nawwara, the leader and founder of Al Dastur Party. Mr. Nawwara, always a pleasure having you with us here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now it's time to head to our second topic of tonight's Daily Debate regarding the European Union halting some military aid to Egypt's army. Let's check out this report, and we'll be right back with our distinguished guest.
The foreign ministers of the European Union's 28 members agreed last week to halt the sale of military equipment and weapons to Egypt at an emergency meeting held in response to the government's crackdown on violent protests. EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton said the ministers had decided to suspend the sale of security equipment and arms to Egypt. Ashton added that the ministers of the bloc had also reached an agreement to review aid to the country. She stressed that the bloc strongly condemned all acts of violence and believed the recent actions of the military had been disappropriate. Speaking at a news conference at the close of a 4-hour meeting between the ministers, she said that the EU call on all sides to halt the violence and urged all sides to come together in an inclusive process to agree a political solution to the country's crisis. Ashton added that all member states feel very strongly they want to continue to support the people of Egypt. The EU ministers had agreed to suspend export licenses to Egypt for any equipment which could be used for internal repression and to reassess arms export licenses and review their security assistance with Egypt. Meanwhile, U.S. President Barack Obama said a forceful response to the military crackdown in Egypt would come according to long-term national interests. In an exclusive interview, Obama emphasizes the importance of U.S.-Egypt relations, in part because of the officials in his administration, stating that right now his administration is evaluating the situation and trying to establish what is the long-term interest of the United States. He asserted that his administration was doing a full evaluation of the U.S.-Egyptian relationship. There is currently uncertainty in Washington over whether aid to Egypt has been cut off. While a U.S. official said the Obama administration is withholding some military aid to Egypt as it reviews how to proceed, the White House said repeatedly that any suggestion aid had been halted beyond 2 areas that have already been announced was inaccurate. The United States provides $1.2 billion in military aid and $250 million in economic aid to Egypt every year. The White House has already postponed indefinitely the delivery of 4 F-16 jets bought by Egypt as part of a 20-jet program signed in 2010.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second topic of tonight's daily debate, talking about the European Union halting the military aid to Egypt's army. And we're joined here in the studio to shed more light on this issue by Major General Magdy Amin, the historian and strategic expert. Major General, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Pleasure is mine.
General Amin, first of all, we're talking about the military aid from the European Union. They're threatening to stop it to Egypt. Same thing with the United States, threatening to halt the military aid and financial aid to Egypt. Can you please shed more light on the nature of the military aid from both the European Union and the United States? What sort of equipment is the Egyptian army getting from both sides?
We must understand that we are, in our military system and organization, we have the attack instruments and tools and the defensive tools. The attacking tools, which we are having the Air Force and the armors, which we call it the cavalry, the armors. And the infantry we are having in everybody's hand is the most efficient weapon which we are having right now is the Kalashnikov in the hand of each soldier, which we are very much trained on it. And it's very easy to maneuver it with it right now in our tactics, in the Russian tactics and the American tactics, which we are using right now. As per the American aids, we are taking $1,300,000,000 per year as a military aid. We are taking from them in the attacking tools and instruments, the aircrafts and the cavalry, which is the tanks, our armed forces, and some of the quick boats which we are having, the plastic which is covered and armored with plastics, and but in the sea. But right now what we are having here is the Air Force, the major. And with the military agreement with the United States, we must understand one thing, that when we are making an agreement with a supplier, we are having in our contracts one article that means you will going to give me the spare parts for the period of 20 years without any period condition. That means they are obliged, if I'm going to give open letter of credit, or we have the according to the agreement, and I'm going to pay for the spare parts, United States is obliged to give it to me according to the contract. But the billion and the 300 million, it consists of workshops. That means we are having an American advisors in each branch. That means we are having American advisors in the Air Force and in the armed forces, the cavalry, and in the Marine. So these workshops, we are paying it from the American aid. The workshops, that means we are paying them. If they're going to annul, that means they're going to skip the American aid, that means those workshops should return back to the United States. That means we were going to return back to the period of Sadat when they said Russia out. We don't want to come this, because you must understand, when we are talking about the strategic and the politics, military is one element of the politics. That means military is one of the elements of the politics, not the contrary, that the politics is one element of the military. No. The main vein and the main nerve in Egypt is the most organized system here in Egypt is the armed forces. So I prefer to use the politics first. Okay, the 1,300,000,000 million is out, but the workshops you will have to pay. If I'm going to say to the United States, if you would like to have the workshops and the advisors here in Egypt, you must pay for them. And they're going to advise which are the spare parts which we are needed right now. And if they are not, then we are amazing people.
Major General, I mean, now, assuming that they will hold the military aid to Egypt, the European Union would stop it, as well as the United States would stop it. What other channels do you think the Egyptian army can actually use to get more weapons? Do you think that we can get military aid from Russia, maybe from Asia, Korea, and even China?
We are still using the Russian equipment. The Russian tanks, it's amazing, and we even modified it to suit our battle and our battlefields which we are using. We have an air condition, we have everything. We did it, and we, even the Americans, when they came and they saw what we did in our tanks right now, it's amazing. The people of the armed forces, the armor, the cavalry, they are amazing people. They are technicians up to 100. But we are having from the United States, this is from the United States, but from the European community, which we are using it from Germany, for example, we would like to make a new system, which is the system of the new technology, which I am going to know a system, program system. That means I'm going to know how many bullets on the soldier, his name is so, how many bullets when I'm sitting here. Where is the spare parts? This machine needs spare parts there in this area, and this area, and this area. That means